in the frame here. It's Christina. I gotta lean forward. It's Christina from at Christina Lovisa, and I am here today with you okay. Sorry guys, 1 second. I'm just going to scroll down so that we can keep a live chat going. Where is the chat? I apologize. I am using a different software today, so I need to find the chat so that we can say hey. Okay, one quick sec. Okay, there we are. I think that I am able to see your questions here. So should you have any questions, you want to pop over, you want to say hi, I am certainly here for you. So today I am working with the Stormy Iris, and I have mounted it to a gallery depth wood panel. So for those of you not familiar with that, this is like a canvas, but rather than actually being canvas, it's wood. So I am making this into a wall painting. And what I did was I took the Stormy Iris and I followed the directions on the package. I adhered it to the board. You can see here, there's some white paper. Around the edges, I just took some chalk paint and I went and I colored in the blue, and then using a stencil, I added some white polka dots. And you're going to see momentarily the, okay, so I can't see the chat. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 sec, guys. Say hi if you're here, and then that way I'll know if this is the chat, because I don't think I have a chat active. So let me get back to the live and then we'll see if I can find the chat. So give me one quick sec. And this is always such a difficult process for me because I'm used to using my phone, but for some reason something has happened to my phone and I can't do a horizontal. So I'm using my laptop, but it's not easy to see the chat when you are using your laptop. So I may not be able to see your questions today. I know there's going to be a lot of questions because I'm working with encaustic, and that's very different from anybody who's used to using acrylics or any water-based paints. So I definitely want to make sure that I answer your questions as you have them. Okay, so well, anyway, we'll just hopefully I see that, and if not, I'll just have to answer your questions later. Let me see. Pause for 1 sec. Okay, comments. Here we go. Anyway, sorry, I don't think I can do that, guys. So I'm just going to have to jump back in here and continue on. And again, apologies if you can't, if I don't answer your questions, I'll just have to get to them later. Anyway, so carrying on. So encaustic is a beeswax paint and it doesn't stick to acrylic. So I have to use chalk paints around here. And I am going to put the camera down so that we can start to work on this and I can explain more of what I'm doing. So let me just tilt the camera. There we go. So now you'll be able to see exactly what it is I'm doing, and I'll narrate my way through it. So I've used chalk paint as a base to finish the edges. Where I didn't finish the edges, I could have, but that's all going to be flowers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with beeswax medium pellets. So this is basically a mixture of damar resin and beeswax. And I do this thing that I call on the spot waxing. which is easy because, so this is not pure beeswax. This actually has Damar resin in it, which stabilizes the wax. And it's a whole thing, but it's actually necessary to tell you that in case you want to try something like this and you use pure beeswax. So it is a special type of beeswax that is meant for painting. And I'm using an encaustic iron. And what I'm doing is I'm just melting the wax in place. And then I'm going to spread it out using the iron. So I have the iron set really low. We don't want to burn the wax. So anytime quickly, a few things happen. One is that the encaustic medium will burn and it'll smoke. Smoking wax is actually, smoking anything really, is deemed carcinogenic. So we don't want anything bad and unhealthy. So maintaining a proper temperature of your wax at any point of the fusing or heating process and or melting process is also really critical. And now there's a lot to learn about encaustic, but if you are watching this for the first time, I encourage you to visit my website, and I have all kinds of videos there, including intro videos on encaustic, just so that you maintain a healthy environment while you're working, and yeah, learn a little bit more about encaustic. So as far as I know, I'm the only person who has taught this technique. So whether I invented it or not, I think I did, but who knows, right? Of melting the medium directly on the panel. And I do that instead of heating it first and then brushing it on, because it's really just a simple way of getting a flat first layer of the medium down. Now, I'm sure most of you, if you haven't tried encaustic, you've seen an encaustic painting. And you know that encaustic is known for its luscious layers of texture and fogginess, almost creating like a dream-like state. So the Aussie Decor Transfers, or not transfers, but they're transfers decoupage rice papers are absolutely a beautiful base for this project. And I couldn't tell you how excited I was to see this transfer in person when it came, because I knew it was going to be destined for an encaustic painting rather than an acrylic painting. It just had such a nice, I don't know, there's just something about it. It just looks like a beautiful base for me. Realistic looking floral paintings. Teaching myself how to paint a floral, and I love irises, so I think that this is going to be a really interesting project. I'm so sorry guys that I can't see the chat, so that is an issue, and I don't want to spend all my time looking for it while I'm trying to show you this, so bear with me. I will get back to you later. Okay, I will get back to you later and answer any questions you may have. But if you visit my website, ChristinaLovisa.com, you should find a free video there which gives you at least an intro into an encaustic and mixed media painting. So if you haven't followed what's happening so far, that's just probably because it's an encaustic question you have. So if you are just getting this one spot up here, making sure the whole base is covered. Anyway, and if you are familiar with encaustic, then basically what my forte is taking a stable manner into mixed or into encaustic paintings. So I have the whole base covered in the clear now for the iron at that point, because all I needed to do was get the base on here and get it relatively smooth. Now I am going to use my torch, and I'm just going to give it a quick fuse. What that's going to do is just smooth it out just a little bit more and self-level, if you will, although it's not self because I guess I'm doing it, so it'll level the wax a little bit. And now I'm going to go in with my, there we go, now I'm going to go in with my colored waxes. So on my left you can't see it, but maybe I can get you to peek over here. So let's see if I can get to it. So there, this is a quick glimpse at my hot griddle. So the hot griddle has all my colored waxes on it, and I'm going to be using it, here we go, back to the main project. I'm going to be using it to and my layers and my thickness to the wax medium. So even if this is as far as you got with an encaustic painting, it's still pretty cool, right? Because we have that dreamy like state happening behind these irises, and I think it's really interesting as it stands, and then that's all you have to do. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start adding some colored waxes to this. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm just using a 3-inch razor blade. Where am I? There you are. 3-inch razor blade, and I'm just kind of redistributing the wax. I want it to be really smooth in some spots, and I like to build the texture in others. So I'm just using that. Now I'm going to use some of my colored waxes, and in order to grab them, because they are warm, I'm just going to put them, hold it with a rag. And this is like a really beautiful purple that I made earlier, and I'm just going to sort of paint by numbers. I'm going to add little daubs of the color, and I'm placing it where that rich purple color already exists. So call this cheating or call this teaching myself how to paint an iris. It doesn't really matter. To me, at the end, it's going to be luscious and beautiful, and I'm going to have a beautiful painting to hang on the wall. And thanks to the Aussie Decor Transfers, I have this gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous paint by number background for myself to teach myself how to do this. So I am just thrilled at the possibilities that I see before me. So now some of the ones are different colors. I might add a bit of the purple to it, just because I love that purple iris color. I really, really do. So not only am I using the colors that did exist, the purples that did exist in here, I'm actually just adding my own bits here and there. And I don't think I'm going to use on the grill because it cools pretty quickly. And I'm going to grab a different purple. So here we have a more like here and there to where the darker bluey colors are. So basically I'm just laying down shadows and shading where it already exists in the painting. And I don't mind if mine ends up being a little more abstract, sorry, than the original painting. There we go. Adding some more color. Perfect. That's great. And now I'm going to take a third purple. This one has a bit of an iridescent to it, so I think it's kind of interesting, and it's going to add a different look to this iris painting. So I'm now just kind of randomly putting it into some of the iris sections, and it's a bit more translucent, so I'm able to see the other colors through it. So it is looking a bit messy right now. If I could read your comments, that's probably what you're all saying. But it is really cool, and just bear with me here. It will get more interesting. I'm going to add some up here. Now you're also going to notice that there are other colors like the leaves and things that exist in here. I will build those out in just one moment. There. Okay, so I'm really liking the way this is building so far. Okay, so now this is where I call the magic. So we've deposited the color, I've deposited the color, and now I'm going to use my blade. Now this is not standard practice for encaustic. I always say if you have 10 encaustic teachers, you're going to get 10 different ways of doing encaustic. This is just how I manipulate and move encaustic around. So now we have to fuse it though to its previous layer. So encaustic actually means to burn in or to fuse in. So now I have to fuse it to its previous layer. And we do so by adding heat. So you can use all different heat sources, embossing guns or heat guns or different torches. I just happen to like my butane torch. There we go. So I'm giving it a first sort of melt, which is the fuse. And because it's got that clear layer underneath, it's got something to bond to. So that's why I did the clear first. And then if I don't overheat it, it should cool quickly enough that I can start moving some of these waxes around and mixing them. So if we overheat the wax, then we end up with what looks like an acrylic pour. All the colors tend to blend together and mix, and it looks really beautiful. But I want to be able to move it with my blade, and so in order to do that, because molten wax, as you can imagine, is pretty hard to keep from swirling and from mixing together, and maybe I want a little bit of that, but at this point I just want to carve in some of the actual details. So using my blade, I'm going to just sort of thin out and move some of these layers around and add some depth to these leaves, to these buds, to these petals, just by carving. So I'm putting a bit of pressure on the blade, not too much. And as I'm scraping, I'm picking up wax, and I'm able to redistribute it because it's still warm. So the iridescent, I don't know if you guys can see it from your angle, but it is truly spectacular. A bit advanced if you have no experience with encaustic, but there are so many great ways to learn encaustic. You can take a class from an instructor, just look it up near you. You can also find a lot of courses online. I'm a part of a world symposium. It's an online teaching platform called Painting with Fire, and if you go to my website you can learn more about that. So if you are interested in there we go. If you are interested at all in more encaustic, like I said, it does seem advanced, but it's really not as challenging as as it looks. You just need to know what it is you are doing and follow the basic principles, which is about fusing and heating it safely, and then how you manipulate it, how you work it. Like I'm working it with a blade right now, is really very flexible and up to you, and you will learn your own ways. So you can see that I've got some really interesting marks happening here, and it's very abstract, which I love. And without the tissue transfer underneath, this would not look at all like a floral. But I'm just loving how it's turning out, and I so wish we could chat because I'm sure you have a million questions. Now I'm going to work on some of the greenery and bring some of that into it. So I'm going to pick up a green. I have a couple greens here, but I think I'm going to start with sort of this leafy green. And using that, I'm going to put in the stems. And then a bit of green here and there. And then where are some of those white edges we're showing? I'm going to add a bit of the green. Now the white edges that I'm speaking of are because this panel that I'm using is 24 inches by 24 inches, and the actual transfer, or decoupage paper rather, I just am now random which complement and give the illusion that there's foliage sort of everywhere. So I don't want any of that white to show, so I'm going to get rid of that. That can be a big leaf, so I'm just ad-libbing a little bit. Maybe I'll add a little bit on the side. Okay, so that green, and then it always helps then to have another complementary color beside it, just to make it look like a shadow. There we go. So I'm going to add a bit of the brighter green here and there. Okay, and then lastly, I think I'm going to bring in just a little more of that purple back to the perimeter. So I think it's going to be enough color for now. And give me one sec. Pardon me for 1 second. I've become unplugged. So I just need to plug that back in so that my wax stays warm. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to fuse again, and I'm going to use my blade. I'm going to do some more carving. You can also use different tools for carving. I often use some pottery tools. You can use different size blades, but I'll show you different tools that I use. But right now, I just need to do a fuse first. There we go. The thing about encaustic wax is that it can be really beautiful and it can be really challenging. So having the Decor Transfer, the Aussie Decor Transfer as your base really is the forgiving part in all this, in that it makes it really easy, and you can always carve back to the original design. So if you think you've lost detail or whatever, you can always come back to that original design, which is one of the absolute bonuses of working with something and not starting from scratch, right? Because if I had a bouquet of of irises in front of me, and I was painting them, then that would be a greater challenge for me rather than just adding a bit of color. So I got my blade is all gummed up with wax, but that's okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lessen the green, because I want the green to be like a hint of green, not necessarily this wild amount of green. So I'm just going to reduce the amount of green that I have going on. And if I could read your questions, right now I bet you'd be asking me why we have this silhouette of a bird here in white. So I actually wanted to put in a collage element of a bird, but because the background is so dark, I decided to underpaint it in white first, right on top of the transfer, which is actually giving me a, there we go, which is actually giving me a better base for the bird to show up. So in one moment I'm going to get to applying my bird, which is just a plain old photocopy that, or a printout rather, from my printer of a bird sketch and illustration, and I often use it in, oh, see, I can pull back to the white. That's really exciting there. So if I pull back to the white there, I may want to pull back to some of the other colors elsewhere, and maybe I want to add a bit of white. That's also a possibility. So I'll show you a little bit of that. So if I add a little bit, it does look a lot too heavy in contrast to all this, but I'm going to scrape it back. There we go. So now I'm just allowing the little bit of the bleed through the, what I say always looks like an acrylic pour. I'm going to allow a little bit of that to happen so that my natural laciness of an iris can take shape. And maybe I'll get that going up here as well. So when I say an overfuse, it's just having the colors extend beyond one another and just sort of bleed into each other. And then it doesn't look good, and there is like a lacy edge, such as in an iris. This is actually looking pretty good. So it may actually look to me like I could bring in a little more of the white, because it's actually really doing a nice job. So I'm going to bring in a little more here and there of creating a bit more of that lacy edge. It's really making this look like an iris, right? So, okay, and a little bit more up here. Good. Okay, so a little more fusing. And then we're going to add the bird, and then this painting is almost done. I might keep working a little bit at it before I post the final results. And I know this is a lot for one day, especially for those of you who are new to watching me. It's a lot, especially if you don't understand this medium. But bear with me, keep watching me. I'm on, I think we're changing the date and time. So do watch for me. My name is Christina, and I try to use all my transfers in artistic career, and this is what I do. Oh yeah, that's looking amazing. So there are ways I'm going to tone this down, but for now that's looking really nice and fluid. Now I'm going to add the bird, and then I'll continue to tell you about what it is I'm doing. Yeah, so I create art that is made for the walls, and today I am working with Aussie Decor Transfer with Stormy Iris, and I'm creating an abstract um, encaustic piece. So if you are just tuning in, I apologize, I'm unable to access the chat today, but bear with me and I will here. And what I've done is I am encapsulating this chickadee, I believe, of the clear wax to the background. There we go. And there are so many other techniques that I can do on top of this, but for today, so that we can minimize the overwhelm, I'm going to just use that clear wax. And then what the bird is doing, because it was wax underneath, I am basically just melting the wax, and it's going to hold that bird in sort of a wax like cocoon. So it's just being held in there, meaning that if I change my mind, I can heat it up and I can pull that bird out. It's not glued in, so it's just the wax just kind of holds it in place. And so what I'm doing to collage it in is I'm getting the wax to melt underneath as well as the wax on top. And give me one second, I need to clean my blade. So this is one of the pottery tools I was talking about. So I'm going to use it, and I'm going to scrape some of the wax back over top of the bird. But it's pushing down on the paper and it's removing any molten wax that is underneath. So the good part about that is that it's going to cool like that, and the bird will be in there a lot more securely than if I just melted the wax without doing this. So if I did that, if I didn't push the wax out, I could end up with an airlock, so to speak, underneath, and that would be an air bubble. So nobody wants an air bubble in their collage, so I'm just going to remove that wax. And then very lightly add some of that wax back up here. I love texture, and so when your wax is still molten, you can still move it around. And so I'm just creating a paste out of my wax because it's still very hot. And butter. The texture, and it's also giving me the volume, I guess that's the word that I'm looking for, underneath. So I'm going to put a little bit more clear on top of here to make sure it's in place. There we go. A little bit more clear. And a bit more clear, so it's probably hard to see the corner, but it's building up with volume. And then in here, now I'm just going to very lightly infuse that so that we don't reheat air bubble where it wants to come out. Fusing that wax, fusing this wax. So yeah, I would say that that is pretty much an encaustic painting. So there's probably a few things I'll do to it later on. But for the purpose of this demo, so it doesn't go on all day, I will wrap this up by telling you that if you want to purchase this transfer, the Stormy Iris, or any other of the Aussie Decor transfers, I would really appreciate if you use the link that's in the description of this video, because it's an affiliate link for me, and if you use the code Christina at the checkout, you will receive a small discount, but like I said, it does help me a lot, so I really appreciate it if you did. Go to Aussie Decor Transfers through my affiliate link. Art projects. It is really fascinating to me that art products have come such a long way from being just standard, pen or paint and canvas. And now we've just evolved into mixed media, which to me is an absolute incredible direction, because we can create such beautiful pieces, art pieces. And when you go to a gallery now, it's just like the boundaries are just being pushed, and that's because materials that we are using and it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Change the camera angle a little bit so that you can see me. Hey there we are. Okay, so I'm going to hold this up, and I don't even know if I can get far enough away that you can see it, but that essentially is an encaustic painting of Stormy Iris. I will definitely go back in and do a few things. Once, I like to put my canvases right up on the wall, and then I have to, stand back and look at it and adjust and things like that. But essentially paint it all out of beeswax, and using the Aussie Decor Transfers as the base, I have come up with an abstract version of irises that I think will just look absolutely stunning in my powder room. Let's see if I can get you guys a little close up here so you can see the texture and how the wax moves. I'm still sorry I can't see the chat, but anyway, we wasted enough time today trying to find the chat. I will answer all your questions afterwards, so please fire away. Again, if you want to buy this transfer and more, please follow the link in the description. Enter the code word Christina at the checkout, and you will receive a small discount. If you are inspired to do anything, make sure you go to the Aussie Decor Creative Club and post all your pictures as well. And that is also where this one will be posted once it is complete. But again, Stormy Iris by Aussie Decor Transfer and transformed into a wall piece by me, Christina Lovisa. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye now.